Hello and welcome. It's not often that you have serving foreign ministers writing books on foreign policy. Dr. Jaishankar has done this twice over. He had the India way and now he has his second book out, Why Bharat Matters. And I'm here at Nehru Park, ironically of all places, to talk to India's current External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, about Indian foreign policy, which you are pivoting as far away from Nehru Park as is possible. So the irony of all places to end up at the Nehru Park to talk about why you believe much more in the Patel way than you do in the Nehru way.
Well, it's a great pleasure, and I'm very agnostic about parks in which I walk. I'm quite all right with the people with whom I walk. I think that's more important. But yes, it's a great pleasure to be with you.
So the title of your book is Why Bharat Matters. So let me get you to summarize the contents for those who haven't got down to reading it yet. In your opinion, on the global high table, why does Bharat matter at the moment?
I think for a variety of reasons, and you'll get the full message when you read the book. One, we are today a much larger economy. That's a starting point. Fifth largest economy, will be the third largest in the next few years. The quality, the talent of our people, which is today in a sense being, you can say, being unleashed, being nurtured and put out there, which matters more in a more tech-centric world. So as there is a global workplace, as technology becomes more important, the people will matter, and I think Indian talent is today beginning to make a difference across the world. The third is actually, in a way, we are getting our act together. We are getting our act together in India. So you can see much greater interest in the part of the rest of the world. One part of it is, of course, they want to work with us, they obviously want to interested in the Indian market, but the other part is they appreciate the contributions we are making. It can be in very tangible terms, like during COVID, where we were such a major vaccine provider to the world. 100 countries got their vaccines because of us. But it could matter as a voice. The idea of a voice of a global south, the fact that we led the move for African Union to become a member of the G20. I use the word Bharat because I do believe that in the last decade there's been evolution, even a transformation of India. We are much more cognizant of our history, of our culture, of our heritage. We are more authentically us. We are less abashed, less defensive about what we believe in, what are our habits, our customs. So in a way, I would say the Indian personality is also beginning to be displayed on the world stage, and that, to my mind, really it's of course a big point of interest for the world, but it's in that sense an India that is more Bharat.
And that comes through quite strongly in your book, because you try once again to use different stratagems from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, which I see you're trying to do quite consciously, because Indian strategic analysts grew up reading, say, a Machiavelli, American generals from the Second World War. Even Sun Tzu was quoted much more than Mahabharata and Ramayana. You're trying consciously to change that?
Yes, I'm trying to change that because it comes as a package. If today we say vocal for local, if you say one district, one product, you say make in India, that's in a material way this Bharat expressing itself. But Bharat must also express itself intellectually. Why must you go searching for an example from the Greek civilization or Roman history or Chinese classics? And I have nothing against that. Sure. I mean, by all means, we should do that. But when you have something right by your side, and it isn't just that you have it right by your side, you actually, it's something which, everyone, you ask anybody in India, they will immediately relate to it. They'll relate to it much more than, as you say, they would relate to Machiavelli or Sun Tzu. So it's a form of communication too, that if I give you an analogy with which you are, you've grown up with, a saga that you know instinctively. You get it.
You were on a sabbatical of sorts away after finishing up at the Ministry of External Affairs when you wrote your first book, and then from there you've got Why Bharat Matters. This is also an opportunity, sir, for me to look back and reflect on not just your term as foreign minister, but on 10 years of the Modi government's foreign policy. What do you rate as the number one achievement of foreign policy in these 10 years? Do you think the kind of ties that Prime Minister Modi has been able to build with the Gulf Arab countries would rank as your number one achievement, or how would you see it?
I could give you a whole list. Okay. I have given a whole list.
What's your number one achievement?
I would say the number one achievement is the people of India today realize that foreign policy matters to them, and Prime Minister Modi's government and Prime Minister personally, in many ways, what's different about him is you can have a vision. He has the ability to take a vision and bring it, translate it to the ground reality. We have actually shown people how a good foreign policy can bring benefits to them. That today the price of petrol in your car is an outcome of foreign policy. The fact that you travel abroad, millions of Indians travel abroad. I can say confidently people travel in a more secure, confident manner than they did before, knowing that we have their backs. If you look at the last 10 years, we actually, Prime Minister got us to not just create a fund, but actually develop it over a period of time. So more than, I'd say 3.2 lakh Indians in various difficult situations have actually drawn on that fund. You had cases like Operation Ganga in Ukraine. There are many. We just had one, Ajay in Israel, or Kaveri in Sudan. So the idea in a globalized world that we have your back not only at home, but we have your back abroad. Our choices are helping national development. So today, if you look at collaborations of various kinds, which are outcomes of foreign policy, or if you look at, I would say, best practices, even technology, or even exports. Exports have grown very significantly in the last 10 years. Exports mean employment. So I would say a foreign policy that makes a difference to the lives of people, that to me is one very big change. Now, that change manifests itself in different places. In the Gulf, yes, absolutely. I would say if there's one region which has undergone absolute sea change, it is actually India's relations with the Gulf.
What do you think of as the one big failure, what you'd accept as a failure of Indian foreign policy? Our relations with countries in our immediate neighborhood somehow don't seem as optimal as they should be for a country of India's size, stature and aspiration. Do you concede that?
No.
That China seems to be meddling, and while we are trying to weigh in and have an Indian area of influence, there's a very strong Himalayan shadow that hangs over each of these relations.
So, look, if you ask me, are there serious problems with China? My answer to you would be yes. But I would use the word challenge rather than failure. I am presented today by China with a different posture, which clearly must have some calculation or thinking behind it. There is an effort in the last 3 years to actually reflect that posture on the line of actual control, and I have actually stood up to it. So I would actually say I have risen to the challenge. That today, in a military sense, the fact that we have been able to deploy so many troops for round the year in very hard conditions, probably one of the hardest in the world, with a posture which deters Chinese response. In fact, in many ways, itself is an achievement, and it's an achievement because among the efforts of the last decade has been the change in the border infrastructure. There was an era where the thinking was let's not do anything on the Chinese border, and that's the best way. They won't come in, and we don't have to go there. Now, that proved to be completely wrong. That they kept developing their side of the infrastructure, and would keep putting pressure on the line of actual control.
So I read with great fascination your chapter on China, and you've got references to Ravana, you've got references to his arrogance, his overconfidence, etc., and his supposed vulnerabilities and weaknesses. What are the vulnerabilities and weaknesses that you see? And also, where do you see the India-China relationship go from where we are at right now?
Well, as they say, all references in my book are coincidences and are for the reader to draw their own reference. I am making no one-to-one correlation.
You just intersperse them at the right places. China, and then there's Ravan.
Any connection you make are in your mind. Okay. I think one of the most complicated issues in global politics today will be how the only 2 billion plus societies, which both happen to be among the oldest civilizations of the world, today are rising. How one part of it is how they manage their relationship with the rest of the world and the new equations which come. But the other is how do they create an equilibrium, because both are rising at a phenomenal pace. And I grant you, the Chinese, for a variety of reasons which I've hinted at in my book, because I think we didn't make the right policy choices in the 70s, 80s, but today, when you can see a very visible momentum in India, tremendous growth, and growth with the kind of infrastructure change, the human resources are transforming. I mean, a much more inclusive, much more all-rounded growth. I think today, how do we create that equilibrium? To me, that is going to be one of the big issues for Indian foreign policy, surely for Chinese foreign policy, but I think for world...
That's the question. What's the answer? How do you create that equilibrium? Because despite everything that Prime Minister Modi tried at the beginning, the Chinese have a very different reading of the situation.
Look, in life, everything doesn't go your way. You make a best effort. Other people have their calculations, could be right, could be wrong. And sometimes you are presented with a situation as we were presented. Now, what happened, in 2020 when the Chinese made the move on the LAC, the fact was we were in the middle of a COVID lockdown. I think people in this country still don't fully appreciate for us to move tens of thousands of troops with that rapidity to those mountains in that cold with the COVID lockdown was actually a phenomenal logistics operation. And then to stay there and to support that. So the fact is, yes, we have a challenge. I don't think anybody is in denial of that challenge. Your question, how do we deal with the challenge? I think by a variety of ways. One part of it would be to really build up our own deep strengths, as I call it. I think we must manufacture, we must develop technologies, we must build infrastructure, and these were neglected, even in the era of reform. These were neglected. I mean, you still have people who say that, we are not a manufacturing power. That's like abdicating, you're giving up on the race before you even entered it. We tend to say, there's a degree of cult worship in our country. And everything which was done in 50s and 60s, Nehru did it, so that's Indian foreign policy. There could not have been any other choice. I think as a provocative piece, I want people to think. It's a debate, I'm not saying everything Nehru did was wrong. But I'm saying even at that time when many of these choices were made, there were alternatives that were proposed. And one of the important debates was on China. It was on China starting with day one, 1950, when actually Patel has a different sense of China. And he cautions Nehru. So it's not like you say, well, we all thought that there'd never be a problem and then there was this great betrayal. There were very sensible, sober people in this country who said, look at the nature of what we are seeing across the Himalayas. Recognize what it is. And one of the issues I have from that period is we consciously, shall I say, gave up on a set of relationships and options which would have helped us address the problem. And today, as far as I'm concerned, to me, if where national security is, if national security is at stake, there is nothing that I will not do. So, whereas earlier on, for a variety of ideological reasons, we ourselves said, we won't exercise this option, we won't take that country's help, we will not turn to this country. So, what are we doing? Your ideology today is getting in the way of what should be your response. Whereas today we are much more hard-headed about what we should do. The interesting thing, even in 1962, I mean, imagine Sela and Bomdila have fallen, and Nehru actually writes to Kennedy saying, I could have asked you for more help, but I don't know what really people would have said about it. So you're still hesitating with the PLA advancing into India. Now, that is, I think, a subject of legitimate debate today, not because we have to be critical about the past, because there are lessons to be learned from here, and those lessons, by the way, came back to haunt us in the Quad. That when Quad happened, first time, Quad happened, there was pressure on us, we backed off. This time around when Quad happened, we made sure we will not back off. So there are lessons from history.
I think the weather is just very conducive for a cup of coffee, so we're just going to head in and grab you a cup of coffee. Come. So speaking of Nehru, you would have seen how you've come under personal attack from a lot of contemporary Nehruvians like Jairam Ramesh or a P. Chidambaram, who accuse you, they acknowledge your intellectual pedigree, but accuse you of intellectual dishonesty, saying you used to dance around Nehruvians for plum postings back in your day. You've seen those kind of personal attacks coming your way, saying that you're doing a lot just to appease those you serve right now. How do you respond to these personal charges, Minister?
It's very difficult to people who themselves danced around that people like me passed an exam, joined a government. Surely it cannot be anybody's case that postings in the government were all done for political reasons. I mean, for a large part of our careers, nobody, I assume nobody in politics really knew who we people were. So I think this is in a way to be expected, at least from some of these people. I'm being questioning, and to my mind, nations grow by being questioning. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I think it will be, to me, perfectly legitimate. Somebody will question this era and say maybe choices which were made by the people who today are in government could have been better. These were alternatives. I think that's really how polities evolve. Let us worship that era. Nothing could have gone wrong. Questioning it is somehow heresy of some kind. You have now elevated foreign policy to some kind of theology. For me, what were the early choices on Pakistan? What was our early reading of China? What was our early approach to the United States? Three very important relationships which are still crucial today. Okay. Now, I am making the point, even at that time, there were people who put forward certain alternatives. By the way, I'm not even saying who's right and who's wrong, but I think people of this era should know that there were alternatives, because what has happened is, due to this kind of worshipping attitude, we've all brought up to believe, Indian foreign policy was some kind of great wisdom. That was the only thing, it unfolded. There could have been no other choice than the ones we did. If we didn't succeed somewhere, the world was at fault. We were never at fault. we didn't misread China, they betrayed us. I mean, there's a whole cover-up narrative in many ways. I have no problem if somebody tells me, by the way, what you said about Nehru, or need not be Nehru, could be somebody else also. We disagree, what you are saying on this point is wrong. Okay, counter me factually. You know, when you start telling people who have, been part of a system, that as though, there was some great doling out of favors. I mean, there's a certain amount of self-conviction here, as though they were doling out postings. I think most people who have worked in the government would prefer to think that they earned their postings and that we worked for the government of India. We did not work for a family. But those who work for a family apparently still think everybody else worked for a family.
So I was at the World Economic Forum at Davos recently, speaking to various foreign policy experts. The one critique I heard of India's foreign policy is that some in the West think of this as a form of monkey balancing, that we continue to want to further the interests of the Quad countries and at the same time want to be a part of BRICS despite the problems that China is throwing at us, that ultimately India will have to take a side, that the differences with China are too acute for this monkey balancing to continue, that they're saying that you're doing this monkey balancing but it can't go on.
Look, everybody is entitled to their view. To such questions, let me ask a counter question. You have a set of countries who have strong, good relations with India. So let me ask you a question. Why do you have relations with Pakistan then? Why don't you give up your relations with Pakistan? Or why do you have relations with China? Do they give up their relationship with China? So, see, this is a kind of a, I've used this word before and I use it again. It's a mind game. This is to make you limit your options while they maximize their options. In the past, often India constricted its own options. Though we came under pressure, we did not do what should have been done in our national self-defense. Today, I think we are much more realpolitik. We are much more, I would say, hard-headed about our own interests. We are much more confident. So, if you ask me, do you think you can sustain Quad and BRICS? My answer to you is yes.
I want to draw you into some of the global issues that are playing out at this moment. And I want to start with Russia-Ukraine. Is there a Bharat way in that crisis? Does India have what you think could be a way for Putin to get off the ramp and for this war to end?
In many ways, I think they have to find solutions between themselves. I was in Moscow in December, and one of the issues, of course, I also heard from Russia was that, look, this is not just a Russia-Ukraine issue. There's a larger issue of Russia's legitimate interest and relationship with the West. So, the issue today is not like they don't know how to talk, they don't know where to meet, they don't know how to communicate. They know all this is established. There are aspects of it in which we can help, and we've tried. Whether it was the grain shipments or whether it was the nuclear plant which was under threat. We've tried as part of a group of countries in some way or the other to be useful, to be relevant. We'll keep doing that.
How concerned are you by the prospects of escalation in the Middle East, given the fact that now we're seeing the United States attack different targets in Iraq, the conflict with Iran possibly escalating? How do you view the Bharat way in the midst of all that's happening in the Middle East at the moment?
If you ask me, am I concerned about the possibility of escalation? I think everybody should be, because the direction of events in the last few weeks have not been positive. We've seen this spread to the maritime sphere. We've seen this extend now to other countries, some beyond the immediate vicinity. So nobody can be sanguine about it. For decades, we consciously withheld or I would say held back on the relationship with Israel. Everybody in this country knows that we did it for domestic political reasons, okay? And there's a history, there's even a record of it. There were the earlier debates, some of it involved Maulana Azad, some of it, by the way, Patel also had some comments to make on it. But one change, when you say the Bharat way, is the fact that we have today completely normalized our relationship with Israel. That the last 10 years have seen the first time a president of India has visited Israel, a prime minister of India has visited Israel. That assurance, that sense today that we should not be, our strategy should not be should not be hostage to vote banks. I think that is a big change which has come about. But having said that, I also want to say that it is by normalizing with Israel and nurturing that relationship, it is not that we have pulled back from our position on Palestine. In fact, if you look today at the support that we actually give Palestine, it is at a much higher level than we've ever given before in our history. If you look at the projects we have done, I think we give 3 times or 4 times more to the UN RWA than was given in the past. I have no hesitation in telling the Israelis that, look, we do believe a 2-state solution is necessary as part of a long-term answer to what you are facing. So if you mean today that the Bharat way means taking a stance which is based on emanates from our own internal confidence, then addressing the parties with that position, I think yes, we're doing it. I don't think we've reached the stage where the whole focus right now is on Gaza and on preventing escalation. Beyond that, everybody knows there's a diplomacy which will come. I think one has to wait for it.
Okay. I just want to walk across that side. There's some people who seem to be doing what you enjoy quite a bit, which is racket sports. So let's see what's going on. So I want to spend a moment on India's relationship with the United States, which has been developing significantly over the last several years, and especially on your watch, but where apparently we've had some break bumps recently. One was this talk that President Biden didn't come to the Republic Day because they were upset with the way India was trying to bump off alleged Khalistani separatists in the United States, and that's something that America is upset about. Some American senators and congressmen have spoken to say that the drones which are being given are conditional to India acting on the Nijjar case and on the Pannu case.
One of the reasons why the visits which were expected to happen in January didn't happen, we were trying to get a Quad meeting.
Yes.
And Quad meeting obviously needed 3 other parties to come together. The Americans essentially told us that a lot of it is a scheduling issue. If you look at the relationship, I think the relationship today is really solid. I mean, you see Prime Minister's June visit, and even now, I mean, we continue to consult regularly on a whole host of issues. The drone issue. Look, the Americans have a very unique process of decision making. They have separation of powers. I don't think any other country no major country has anything similar. So they have to do their own internal negotiations and approvals, etc. If I am not party to a discussion, and it's somebody else's internal discussion, I think it's more sensible of me to leave it to them to handle. But as far as I am concerned, what we are intending to procure from the United States is a defense decision. In the case of Canada, I think there is a recognition today that a lot of this has to do with Canadian politics, that that they have a long record of interfering in Indian politics. I think we've been fairly upfront about it, which is that we believe today that There are criminal organizations which are transnational, which are involved in a whole series of activities, and whatever allegedly happened in this case is, to our mind, something to do with all of that. And so, I mean, not only do they need to investigate it, which they are, but we also need to investigate it, which we are. Issue for us, I mean, there is a difference in that sense between what happened in the US and what happened in Canada. I think we didn't see the Americans trying to score political points or frankly play to a kind of a vote bank. On the contrary, we felt that they handled it very, very sensibly.
So 2024 is the year of elections. Half the world's population goes to the polls, 60 countries plus. The biggest question in global affairs at this moment is what happens if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again? Does that impact your prism going past November? Or do you think India is one of those few countries where it doesn't really matter whether President Biden comes back or Donald Trump does?
Where the world is concerned, obviously it matters who is the leader of the most powerful and important country in the world. The fact that there would be debates about it, to me, is very natural. But where India is concerned, there are, I think, two aspects to it. One, a structural aspect, which is today we have grown the relationship in so many different areas and so many different facets. It's not just between between political leaders. There's a business angle, there's a service angle, there's a civil society angle, there's a tech angle. So if you put it all together, I think the relationship is very, very strong, and that allows us to approach it with a certain degree of confidence. If you look at the way we have, diplomatically, we've actually had very different presidents in the last 2.5 decades. Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and we've been able to actually, each one has become, in a sense, a stronger contributor. I think you have to give credit also, in a sense, to Indian diplomacy and to Indian political leadership, and I make that as a non-partisan point. I mean, during this period, we've had multiple leaders as well. We have been quite adept at responding to changes in America, at forging new relationships, at building relationships. So I have a confidence that both the structural and the diplomatic is something which should leave us in a good position.
So on Maldives, could we have handled this important country in our neighborhood differently? We now have a president who's very pro-China, belligerently anti-India, wanting the Indian military in whatever little deployment we have out. How concerned are you about how the India-Maldives equation is playing out?
Every country has its politics. In democratic politics, you have contrasting positions. We have to accept that all our neighbors will have their own politics, and those politics will lead them to take positions. And it's a reality, given how large we are and how prominent we are in their lives, that often we will be the subject of their politics. I think there's no running away from that. Now, the issue of how we are handling it, I would say, this has tended to become more angular for a variety of reasons, including, social media controversies. The current government in Maldives seems to have some discomfort with our uniformed people operating medvac systems, 2 helicopters and an aircraft, which are there actually for the benefit of the people. Some aspect of it troubles you, please level with us, and we'd be happy to look at it, because at the end of the day, this is, you rightly said, it's a very important relationship. Neighborly relationships are. Neither of us want to blow this out of all proportion. If you look at these systems, these are, obviously, you're talking to helicopters and aircraft here. you need competent people. We had a team from Maldives over for 2 days. We have an understanding that they value the operations of this. We would like obviously this to continue as an expression of our friendship to the Maldivian people. So we have to find the technically competent personnel who can operate it.
Civilians as well, maybe.
So we are working on, but they have to be technically competent. I mean, they should be authorized to fly, and obviously because the source of the equipment is military, the military has to have that confidence in them. I think there are solutions. We are working on those solutions. We said yesterday that we will. So I really think over a period of time there should not be an issue between us. I think the rest of the relationship is strong. We have many other things happening, and I hope that the focus shifts there rather than drags on as unnecessarily on this particular issue.
Now, Minister Jaishankar, I know that you like racket sports. At the Delhi Gymkhana, I've seen you play a mean game of squash. Can I get your indulgence and get you to hit a few shots across the ping pong table? Oh, not bad. I see you got a mean serve going. You used to play, Dr. Jaishankar, quite a lot of squash.
I still do.
You get a chance to do anything else apart from foreign policy nowadays, Dr. Jaishankar?
I do a lot of domestic policy.
Now your competitive side is also coming out. Oh my God. Not bad, Dr. Jaishankar. You went from partially interested, half amused, to being quite competitive very quickly.
The inner self is difficult to control beyond a point.
I want to talk at the end of this interview about Pakistan. You know, when I was interviewing UPA ministers in the old days, Pakistan would usually be the first question. Interestingly, it's the last right now. And that's also how you've dehyphenated India and Pakistan. But there's a big election happening, and we're seeing the key players talk about rapprochement, about possible peace. Do you think if in the future, say, a Nawaz Sharif were to come back to power, and if Prime Minister Modi were to come back to power for a third time in India, that might be an ideal opportunity for our two countries to find some common ground and move forward?
I think it's not as simple as that. You are aware that where Prime Minister Modi is concerned, from the first oath taking in 2014, he wanted good relations with Pakistan, willing to make that effort to get them to understand, not just with Pakistan, with all the neighbors. Okay? That's why we have the neighborhood first policy. It's a decade now, has been that you can say the terror industry or infrastructure, call it what you will. They have not really let up on India in a significant way. Yes, after Uri and Balakot, we've seen them more circumspect. But the fact is, really the bottom line today for us with Pakistan is really the issue of terrorism. There's no getting away from it. And one of our problems with Pakistan has been, I mean, if you look at it, it started on day one. I mean, when Akbar Khan really, as a serving general of the Pakistani army, organized and pushed raiders, and then they said, oh, we got nothing to do with this. And one of the reasons it has dogged us for so long is we ourselves have not been we have not acknowledged its centrality in the past. You cannot carry on with cross-border terrorism and say, well, I'd like good relations in all other spheres. To my mind, again, I make this as a non-political point. I think, most of this country was actually very angry after 26/11. I mean, people felt that, look, we should have done something. Today, you can see the resolve where Government of India is concerned. That resolve has been expressed in different ways. So we have to hope that there is a fundamental rethink on this issue.
So till they address the issue of terrorism, whether Nawaz Sharif comes to power or something.
It's not an issue which can solve overnight. You know, intractable issues take time. I accept that. But we need to see that issue addressed.
And lastly, Dr. Jaishankar, you know, the Prime Minister is speaking about a Viksit Bharat by 2047. That's in various aspects of national development. On the issue of foreign policy in 2047, where do you see India on the global head table? I interviewed the WEF President Borje Brande, and he said that the next 15-20 years could be about the G3, India, the United States and China. Is that your aspiration as well, or do you think let's not just get carried away so soon?
Bit of both. Because the reality, look, we will become the third largest economy probably by 28. After that, if you see the Goldman Sachs prediction, you will actually see in the graph where India is concerned go up very sharply. And of course, their prediction is by 2075 we will be the second largest economy. Now, the fact is that the weight of the economy is a very important factor in comprehensive national power, so the entire world will take that into account. We are people, we come to this, you called it something else, I call it Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra, I'm not just saying it as a state. We Indians have this ability to actually get along with people. We go to places, we adjust to societies, we become good contributors there, we build up reputations. So what has happened is, in the world today, there is a feeling about India, okay, like, you know, these are responsible citizens, these are contributing people, they are, you know, no, people don't gripe about us as they gripe about some other communities and nationalities. So to me, that acceptability, the skill talent, the economic weight, the fact that we will be contributing much more, you can see already today, I mean, look at our first responder operations, look at the development projects we did, see what a difference we made during vaccines. So, you know, this, the India as a Sankat Mochan, to use a Ramayan phrase. So how do we, you know, let that play out? I think that's where I see us going, and you know, I think to me that Viksit Bharat will actually be really a major force to contend with in 2047.
This idea of using the Ramayana and the Mahabharata as a metaphor, as a stratagem to explain contemporary affairs, I think is also reflective of the new Bharat that you are trying to build. You've explained why Bharat matters. Thank you very much, Dr. Jaishankar, for taking time out and joining us, as I said, in Nehru Park to talk about that path that Patel could have taken and the path that Nehru took, and where we've ended up because of the choices that we've made and the way forward.
Well, thank you. It was a great pleasure, and I think the message of the book, I'm sure, is as powerful, if not more, than the venue. Thank you.
Thank you so much.